Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Health Made Simple Show. I'm your host, Dr. Bart, and today we're going to explore the vital role that's often overlooked as an element to your health of the spine. So, maybe the single most overlooked component of longevity for all the speakers out there, for all the podcasts, for everything. We're always talking about all these other conversations, blood work, lab work, and I'm guilty of all this as well. Probably the single most overlooked, and maybe, I'll make my case for it today, the single most important element that we are forgetting about when it comes to longevity is your spine and your spinal health. So we're going to break this down in a couple different ways today. We'll talk a little bit about anatomy. There's always a fascinating component of our health. A lot of times we don't even know how many bones are in our spine. So we'll talk about that today. It's just kind of fun little tidbits there. We'll walk and talk a little bit about posture, the role that posture plays in our life. And this may blow your mind when I talk about how important posture is and also what it reveals about each one of us. What does our posture tell us about who we are? Then, of course, we'll talk a little bit about nutrition and then movement as well. I'll probably flip those around just a little bit. So, again, welcome to welcome and thank you for being here in another episode of the Health Made Simple Show. Appreciate you. Keep doing your thing. Keep sharing it out. Keep spreading the love. It's working, folks. By you liking, by you subscribing and following all the different methods that you do, whether it be on YouTube or Apple or Spotify, all those little things matter. We appreciate if you have comments, please put them in. If you have questions, please send them. We'll get to them eventually. So appreciate you guys. Keep doing your thing. All right, let's dive in right away here. Let's start talking about the anatomy of the spine itself, and then we'll go a little bit farther with it. So just anatomy-wise, I'm going to break it down. I think these are just fun to know. I get an opportunity often to teach different groups, and when I start with spinal anatomy, it's always fascinating. As a chiropractor for the last 30 plus years of my life, man, I just took it for granted that I know how many bones are in the spine, but I didn't before chiropractic school, which I think is kind of weird. Anyway, so you have 7 vertebrae in your cervical spine in your neck. You have 12 in your thoracic, which is the next group of vertebrae going down your spine, and then you have 5 lumbar. You have a sacrum at the base, and then you have a coccyx. So add those all up, and we got 26. So 7 plus 5, did I do that right? Yeah, it's 12, and 12 is 24, and then 2 other. And the reason I'm telling you that, so we have 24 movable segments. And in between each one of those, you have what's called spinal nerves that come out. And from there, those spinal nerves go out to the rest of your body. So we call them spinal nerves because they're right on the spine. And when the nerves go out into the body, we call those peripheral nerves. Those are the nerves that are outside of the spine. It's kind of an important distinction when it comes down to what's going on in your body. But nonetheless, here's the thing. This I learned in chiropractic school, and ever so grateful for understanding this, because this is what I still believe that most docs forget, this fundamental component, that your central nervous system, which is your brain and your spinal nerves, think of your spinal cord, communicate to every cell, tissue, and organ in your body. And if the communication is good, your body has the opportunity to function good. If we reduce this communication, just like many things in life, if we reduce the amount of communication, the quality of the communication, the frequency of communication, then we as a result, we're going to have poor outcomes. Meaning that if your fingers cannot communicate to your brain, and you put your fingers in a fire and you cannot tell your brain to pull your hand away, we're going to have a problem. Simple example, yet as real as it gets. We know that the better the nerve communication to every cell, tissue, and organ in your body, the better your body works. So a little bit of anatomy about the spinal cord, the brain here. So it's the brain, spinal column, and all the nerves that come out of it. Here's what I also want you to think as we go into this. I can't get past this, because this part always blows me away when I start thinking about how beautiful and how intelligent our creators were when they made our bodies. So just walk with me for a moment here down this path of understanding how our bodies were made up. So we have this brain, we're going to call it this. We have our brain inside of a skull. The skull is the strongest, thickest bone in the human body. The brain is the single most important thing that we have in the body. How do we know this? Because our creators decided to protect it better off than any other thing in our body. You might say, well, the heart's the most important. Well, the heart's definitely important. It's protected by some ribs, and there's some spaces in between those ribs where you can come up from underneath. You could get to the heart. You can't get to the brain, folks. You'd have to crack the skull. It's the only way. Now, you might say we can get there through the eyes. Yet our bodies have built-in mechanisms. So as long as your eyes work, that you will duck, move, and blink and flinch to ways that something could not penetrate that little hole in the back of your eye socket. I'm sharing all this with you. So you start to get perspective of how brilliant and how masterful our bodies are created. And as a result of that, and gain a little respect for how they're created, maybe we do our best to keep them in the best shape possible. So now think of this. So the brain, our skull protects the brain. And then you have these 26 movable segments, which we call our spine, and which is absolutely fascinating. If you've ever seen a spinal model and closely looked at it, you recognize that down through them, almost like it's carved out this perfect hole where your spinal cord sits but doesn't touch any of the bones. And there's really almost no way to penetrate the spinal column either, unless, of course, through a trauma or something like that. And I'm mapping all this out for you just to take a pause and to appreciate how brilliant the human body was created, and that with the best possible actions that we can take, if we can continue to support non-interference, to literally help our bodies do what they were designed to do, to protect these very particular things like our brain and our spinal column and the spinal nerves that come out in between each and every segment. If all we did was remove the interference and allowed our bodies to function at the best, we would do wonders for our longevity and our everyday vitality. All right, so that's a little bit of anatomy for you. So how else does the spine contribute to our longevity? First, let's just talk about posture. So good posture helps maintain the natural curves of the spine, which can prevent strain and injury. Poor posture, on the other hand, can lead to chronic pain, decreased mobility, even issues with our internal organs. This is where it gets very interesting. When your spine is misaligned, it can affect anything and everything from your breathing to your abdomen to your digestion to even what your mood is. And I'll repeat that. When your spine is misaligned, poor posture, it can affect everything from your digestion to your mood. And this is where I want to dive in a little bit about posture. So I will tell you this. Of all the things we have out there to collect data, all the things we have out there to make observations about longevity and about where things are going with your health, the single easiest, most prevalent, available to us every single day and at no cost is the observation of your posture and how well you move your body. Those two things are probably the single most definitive observations you can make of a person's future health. You might be saying, no, doc, it must be, isn't it our lipids or understanding what our heart markers are? All of those are important, no doubt. Yet nothing tells us as crystal clear in terms of longevity. So let's talk about longevity for a moment. To have longevity, meaning, well, I should almost say this in this sense. I'm not talking about just living there, sitting in a couch and you can't move your body. I'm talking about your health span, not just your lifespan. Your health span, your ability to function as a human that wants to be able to get outside, to move, to be able to participate in life, to give, to love, to serve, to experience life at its fullest. That's when I'm talking about health span, that's what I'm talking about. Longevity, and if that's our definition of longevity, your ability to move is critical. The very first thing that, or the only thing that actually makes anyone ever say, I feel old, is the inability to move. For a moment, I want you to picture, if I say, picture in your mind what a little old lady looks like. And immediately, the picture you have of a little old lady is a little old lady who's bent forward with abnormal posture that's starting to change. And they don't move well. They don't bend well. They're not dynamic with their movements. All of these things change. So when someone or yourself starts to lose range of motion, whether it be as simple as turning your head to the left and right, up and down, or your spinal range of motion, the ability to bend backwards, to squat down and tie your own shoes, when we start to lose these range of motions, we are starting to lose vital parts of our life and our lifespan. These are limitations that we're starting to have, that when they start to compound over time, we start to lose vitality, which is essentially our life force. So here's the thing about posture. It goes with you everywhere you go. You cannot avoid it. And here's a couple things that we've learned. One, that it's fascinating, this next little bit I'm going to share with you. Most of your posture is going to be driven by your mindset. So if you're a teacher out there, maybe you're a public speaker, you anything where you have a little bit of an audience, one of the first things you notice whether or not your audience is paying attention to you is what? It's their posture. So if we look out there and we see our audience are slumped down in their chairs and their chins are down and their bodies are all slumpy, we know they're not paying attention. So your posture reflects what you are thinking. We can also look at someone's posture and kind of and be able to determine what level of energy they have, where their mindset is. So if you look at an athlete who is on the sidelines and they're slumped forward, they got poor posture, they've been mentally defeated. And the moment you change their posture, things change. So if you are a person who walks around with your shoulders forward, head down, and you don't really present yourself energetic, you don't present yourself to the world well, listen, you're sending a message to the world, and the world will respond to you as such. If you want to change your environment, you want to change the direction things are going in your life, I'm telling you right now, change your posture and everything changes. The beauty is this. You can just change your posture. Choose right now as you're listening to this. Sit up straight. Bring your chin up a little bit. Bring your eyes directly ahead of you. By the moment you change your physical body, you change everything in your environment. Here's what we've learned over the years, that you can change your posture to change your mind, and you can use your mind to change your posture. Whichever one you need to do, you're allowed to do that particular one. We also know this, that your energy is often reflected in your posture. When you have good energy, you stand tall, you stand strong. There's a big difference here so we're going to get into a little bit some things that we can do for our spine, and especially for longevity. And we'll talk about things like yoga. And being flexible doesn't mean you have good posture. And I want you to take home this little lesson I'm sharing with you this morning about posture. Your posture is a key into understanding how you're going to go through life. So for those of you who've ever heard of something called your vagus nerve, if you've had any challenges with anxiety in the past, maybe you've been a little bit wound up or stuck in what we call sympathetic dominance, and maybe you've done a little deep dive and you start to learn online, man, if you can reset your vagus nerve, it's one of the most efficient, natural, phenomenal ways to get your body to relax. And really what the vagus nerve is, it starts from the bottom of your brainstem and goes all the way down into your abdomen. And what we know that is what supports your parasympathetic activity, things like rest and digest and the ability to breathe calmly. Sympathetic dominance is just the opposite. That's being all wound up. That's us being kind of short breath, under stress, maybe like we feel like we're on coffee, we're a little bit emotional, etc. Here's the beauty. When we are able to relax that nerve set, our posture changes, which is fascinating. We're going to talk about some therapies in just a moment. One of them being, and of course I'm a little biased here, every time you go to your chiropractor, every time you get an adjustment, many of you will already recognize this. If you get adjustments, one of the first things you notice is that you can breathe better. The reason you can breathe better is because the moment you get adjusted, especially if you get adjusted in your cervical spine, your thoracic spine, the moment you get adjusted, it relaxes the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve is the one that controls things like breathing, resting, digesting. It is not uncommon. That's why it sounds kind of quacky, but nonetheless, many times people go to a chiropractor, start getting adjusted, and they digest their food better. The bloating goes away, the burping goes away, because they're calming the nervous system back down. And again, a lot of this is all a function of posture. So we have some issues with posture. If we talked about how it's structurally supposed to support us, let's take this in another direction. If we look at something as simple as blood pressure, and this is where things get a little weird. I'm not telling anyone that we treat blood pressure. Please hear that. But I will tell you, from the function and physiology part of blood pressure, there's really three primary reasons that people have high blood pressure. One is not genetics. It's not because your dad, your mom, your dog, your neighbor, etc. There's really three reasons. First, it's almost always there's some level of deficiency of magnesium or a B vitamin. And that's, from stress, sweating, alcohol, and sugar. That's the predominance there. And then we also have liver. If their liver is congested, and if you've listened to me on this podcast before, often I will do a test where I have you, there's a supplement we use called Antrodex, which helps do, liver drainage really quick as well. I'll have you chew up 4 or 5 of those, sit there for about a minute, retest your blood pressure. If it goes down, we know at least in part your high blood pressure could be caused by liver dysfunction, liver being overworked. And then the third is posture. If we compress our organs all day long, our heart has to work harder. Sitting is literally the new smoking. So if you sit there for long periods of time and you're literally compressing, you're putting more pressure on your heart, your abdomen, your liver, your stomach, your digestive system, this by itself can change things. So there is a test for all my clinicians out there listening, my docs out there listening. There's a test called Ragland's test where we test your blood pressure lying down. And when you lie down, it's easier. Your blood pressure should lower, both your systolic and a little bit your diastolic. And then we quickly stand you up and we test your blood pressure again. Normally, your systolic, just from going from lying down flat to standing, should elevate about 7 to 10 points. That's normal. If it goes too high or doesn't go up at all, that's usually indicative of an adrenal issue. That's a different conversation. But nonetheless, we know that posture influences blood pressure. So those are the 3 things that creates it. Now listen, do you know how many people are, one, not eating good foods, sitting at their desk, highly stressed, and compressing their organs? And then we put them on medications. Does that medication get to the root problem? Absolutely not. So posture is one of the most significant things that we can look at for longevity. I'm going to go a little deeper here because I want to hit this home. Who has the best posture of all the people out there? Yes, our athletes are probably some of the absolute best, because they have really good balances. They're usually very confident, very strong. They have good cores, etc. But who has the best posture? Who has the best posture naturally without thinking about it? You know who it is? Toddlers. Think of a little 18-month-old kid, little boy, little girl, maybe 2 years old. When they stand there, they got impeccable posture, impeccable. They look like little linebackers. They have a nice little curve in their lumbar spine, little bubble butt, a good thoracic spine. Their curve in their spine, their cervical spine is now being developed, and literally head over shoulders, shoulders over hips, hips over knees, knees over ankles. Beautiful posture in these little children. Then what happens? We put them into a desk, we sit them in a chair, and we start to manipulate and change over time. We unwind all that beautiful and innate intelligence that's taking place, and we stuff them into chairs. We start to manipulate how the body works. We start to manipulate the spine itself. And when what happens is, and again, posture by changing it in the moment doesn't hurt. And that is a big problem, because we don't necessarily, well, I had bad posture today, I can see that this is going to affect me long-term in my life. It doesn't work that way. This is a slow go. This is compounding interest. So what happens is, little bit by little bit, the muscles start to change. The ligaments, the tendons start to change. Some muscles shorten, some lengthen, some get tight, some have to expand. And these imbalances, because we do them over and over and over and again, we sit and we sit and we sit. And literally, sitting is like the new smoking. If you're going to sit, man, I'm going to encourage you got a plan. And I'm going to give you some tools today to have a plan, how to unwind that, because it's like having a crooked tire on your car. If you got a crooked tire in your car, does it hurt to drive the car? No, maybe it has a little wobble, no big deal. You can keep driving. But by the time it actually is about to have a blowout, at that moment it can be like, oh, I'm going to change. I'm going to line my car and my tire is going to be better. No. Oftentimes we are so far down the road, things are broken, things are about to explode. Don't get there. So no matter where you are, I'm going to give you a couple tools here now. So again, posture huge. And I love posture because, and listen, as you're sitting there right now, no matter whether you're driving, of course, being safe, when I think about good posture, it's not about just pulling your shoulders back. Really what I want to think is about lifting your ribs, especially in the front of your body. So lift your ribs away from your ilium, or visualize lifting your ribs away from your belly button. And the moment you do that, that sits you up. And now that's good posture right there. Same thing if you were standing. You elevate your ribs, chest up, ribs up, shoulders, not necessarily back, but let them open. And then one of the reasons we don't stay there is because our core has gotten so weak, we can't handle that posture for more than 30, 60 seconds at a time. The other part is this. I want you to imagine for a moment that you are going to be in the sexiest clothes. You bought this new outfit and you're about to go out. And you're checking out your new outfit in a mirror. What do? What's the first thing you do when you put on those new clothes or you're in the dressing room at the store, you change your posture. You put yourself into the best posture that you can possibly visualize yourself in. You stand tall, your head is up, your shoulders are back, your chest is up, and then you put on those clothes. And if they look good in that moment, beautiful. The challenge is, for many of us, we put those clothes on, but that's not the posture we walk out the door with. That's not the posture we show up at the dinner at or the party at. What I'm going to encourage you to listen to this. Change your posture, change your life. Think about the leaders that you have in your life. Imagine so I'm a chiropractor, and if I walked into the room with my clients in there, new patients in there, and I walked in there and I was all slumpity-dumpity, not real good visual. And the first thing that we have, as long as you have eyesight, is our visual impression of the other person. And your posture is sending a message. And I don't want to confuse flexibility and posture, because I know a lot of people doing yoga. They're super, super flexible, but they have awful posture. Our posture is the reflection of our mind influencing our body to walk through life. So think about that for a moment. How you think is going to drive your posture. If you're sad, you've been broken a little bit, what's your posture usually look like? You go more to fetal position. If you got to go stand up for yourself and speak loud, you're going to open up your chest. You're going to stand tall, sing from the top of your lungs. Think about posture every way through life. The more you improve your posture, your physiology, the simplest things like blood pressure can be regulated in your favor. And does that add up to longevity? Sure does, folks. It's all about oxygen, right? It's the more oxygen we have, the better, the longer we live, period. Everyone dies from the exact same reason, and that's a lack of oxygen. No matter what the cause we think the cause of death is, it's always a lack of oxygen. All right, let me move forward here so we keep this kind of tight here. So one of my favorite things, let's talk about spinal movement. Yes, let's consider movement. A flexible and strong spine allows for greater mobility, period, enabling you to stay active as you age. That activity is the best thing when it comes to your ability to be active. In terms of longevity and really our health span, that is the key here. Our ability to be active is key. Regular movement, of course, keeps your spine healthy by promoting circulation, nourishing the spinal discs, which can help prevent degenerative conditions like arthritis. And again, no one ever will claim they feel old until they have a hard time moving. Their spine is stiff, their back is stiff, etc. So I'll make sure that in our notes today, we're going to put a video that I created some umpteen years ago, a perfect, what we call a spinal flow. I don't even call it a stretch. A little spinal flow takes 2 or 3 minutes. Do it every day. Do it the rest of your life. I do this every single day. It's how I healed my bulging discs in my low back some 20 plus years ago. And I still do this every single day. If you sit for even 3 minutes per day, which is everyone listening to this podcast, incorporate this 3-minute spinal flow. I'll make sure it's in the notes here today. Does stress play a huge role? Of course it does. Do we often correlate it? We never do. We never correlate stress in our spinal health. But the moment you have stress, we have less oxygen, less blood flow going into the muscles, tendons, and ligaments. And often we are going to shorten muscles. Usually it's on the front side of our body, like our pec muscles and our psoas muscles, some of our abdominal muscles. They get all tight. They pull our head forward. And where do we feel the stress show up? We feel it in the back. We feel it in basically like our trapezius area, like your trap muscles, because they're trying to pull your head back into good posture. The moment your head leans out in front of your body, now puts your body under stress, makes things tight. So spinal movement, absolutely incredibly important here. My favorite, and I think probably the most important part when it comes to spinal movement is going to boil down, when talking about therapies, I think yoga, absolutely incredible. I think things like Pilates, absolutely incredible. I think everyone needs to have probably one or both of those a little bit in your life. And then maybe the single biggest, it's almost like a secret for some, would be the chiropractic adjustment, folks. And I know I'm a little bit biased, but I'll tell you this, straightforward. So I've been getting adjusted now for probably 30 years. Every time I get adjusted anywhere from about once a week to every about 3 weeks or so. Every single time I get adjusted, I feel about 20% better than I did lying down on that table. It's not because I'm walking around in pain. I don't have any back pain. I don't have any neck pain. I get, like some tightness here and there, but I get what I call my maintenance adjustments. Why do I do that? Because every time I do that, it frees the central nervous system. It unwinds all of the stressors that are building up. It unwinds all of the postural imbalances that we have every single day. If we get ourselves used to being bent forward, shoulders rounded, head forward, and all the tight muscles in the body, unfortunately, they get harder and harder as we go to unwind all those. So I would say the chiropractic adjustment may be the single best, simple way for you to enhance your posture, to remove those interferences. Simple explanation of what happens when you get adjusted. When you get adjusted, you increase mobility in the joint, get pressure off the nervous system, reset your central nervous system. So things like your vagus nerve, immediately we're going to help them calm back down. So that's why so many people, many of you listen and go, yeah, man, it's so weird. Every time I adjust, I get adjusted. I feel a little bit better. I breathe better. And I'm not talking 10 minutes down the road. I'm talking about in the moment, that big breath comes. All right, let me wrap this thing up here. So chiropractic adjustment, yoga, Pilates, no doubt. Those are probably the single best things you can do and recognize, and some of it is just us being willing to kind of humble up and say, you know what, man, I don't have good posture. The things I'm doing in my life, I'm probably not that conducive to having good mobility over a long period of time. So you're going to take better care of yourself. Does the nutrition play a role? Absolutely does. The more toxins you put in your body, the more your central nervous system gets put into stress. That sympathetic dominance is the opposite of what we want to be hanging around with. It makes your muscles tight and short, often in defense. That's what creates more inflammation in the body. So although I say it all the time, I'm probably not going to stop saying it, and it is this. We need to put real food in our body. That's what belongs here. It comes from God's garden. It comes from a root, plant, tree, walks in the garden, swims in the sea. Put it in your body. The other crap, leave it out. The closer and the more disciplined you get with that, the better off your life will be. No one will be punished. Nobody will feel worse by not having crap in their body. This I know for certain. So keep giving yourself a favor. Give yourself back the gift of health by taking those toxins out that you know you can. There's a lot of toxins coming that we didn't know about. So the ones that you control, absolutely do. Are there some things I like in terms of, are there particular supplements and whatnot that are good? Yeah, there are. Typically, for just spinal health, there's a product we use called Ligaplex 2 for your muscles, tendons, and ligaments. That's for the actual structure, the muscles, bones, tendons, and ligaments. Love that product. I'll put that in the show notes, called Ligaplex 2. Overall, in terms of just helping your body get out of this sympathetic dominance, probably the herb I've talked the most about is something called ashwagandha. Love that. I can put that in your notes here too. So let's roll through this with kind of a quick recap here. Listen, probably the most overlooked component to longevity, the single most overlooked part, is your spine and your spinal health. If you ask me why, I would probably say because it's very difficult for pharmaceutical companies and or the big players in the game to monetize that. Meaning there's really no money in you taking better care of your spine. Maybe you could say I'm a little bit biased because chiropractors could benefit from it. Yes, folks, but we're not talking about millions and billions of dollars. We're talking about a couple adjustments here and there, a couple bucks here and there. How often do I recommend people to get adjusted? That's a little bit different. Get with your chiropractor. If you're doing pretty good health, typically you'll get adjusted a couple times in a row, over a couple of weeks. And then as your body gets kind of reacquainted with moving better posture, and you're practicing some good, spinal hygiene at home, typically somewhere between once a week and once a month. That's where I find most people find their kind of prime spot. You'll find that out with you and your chiropractor. All the other things that you've heard of when it comes to spinal health, arthritis, degenerative joint disease, degenerative disc disease, all of those folks, all of them are a result of spinal misalignments over long periods of time. Regardless of what they tell you, they're not hereditary. They are things that we cause, very similar to your car tire being crooked over long periods of time, and it starts to wear and tear. So can you positively affect them by simple things? Absolutely. What are those simple things? Some yoga in your life, a little chiropractic, paying attention to posture, putting yourself in a confident posture on a regular basis, choosing the posture that you want. And I tell you this, I'll leave it on this, man. The whole world sees you. The very first thing they see about you is your posture. And you just ask yourself, how do I want the world to see me? Because if you walk around with that particular posture, you become the person that has that posture. So with that being said, folks, thank you for being here. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Health Made Simple Show. Keep doing the thing. Keep sharing out. Keep spreading the love. And of course, most importantly, keep taking deliberate action for your mind, your body, your overall wellness. Y'all be awesome.